Hello and welcome back to another episode of the American Dream Podcast. I am your host, Elias Torres, and today I'm joined by Deena McKay, Scrum Master and host of the Black Tech Unplugged podcast. In this episode, Deena shares how she found her way into tech, the many roles she experimented with before finding the right one for her, and why she started Black Tech Unplugged. Make sure to check out her show wherever you listen to podcasts. Now let's get into the episode.
Hello, Deena. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the American Dream.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I know it was a long time coming, so happy to share a conversation with you.
I love having conversations and people to share their stories. I think that every time I discuss the challenges that we have in the world, especially when it comes to inequity, I always go back to the same answer, which is all about role models. So, like for people to see and hear other people's stories is the beginning of a life-changing experience. So, it's my pleasure to have the stories here. So tell us your story. What's your story? Where you come from? Before you go into the things that you're doing now, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So born there, raised there, and then after being in Cleveland for my entire life, I went to college in New York, Buffalo, New York to be specific, and now I am based because from Buffalo I came to Chicago. So currently based in Chicago, working in Chicago and enjoying the city.
What's the tech scene? I'm in Chicago.
Tech scene is really thriving in Chicago. Before the pandemic, it was really booming. A lot of startups were coming here. You know, there were a lot of startups that were actually being born here. The pandemic kind of changed that landscape a little bit, but Chicago is still a big hub for tech. I see a lot of amazing, cool, and innovative things happening here, so I'm excited for that. And there's a lot of people who are hungry to get into tech here, so I think that Chicago is doing pretty well in the tech sector here.
That's awesome. And how did you what did you study? How did you find your way into tech? Was it through college or through work?
Very good question. So, in college, I actually thought I was going to be an athletic training major. I thought I was going to be wrapping the ankles of people who were probably 3 times bigger than me. You know, I thought I was going to be involved with sports because going into it, I knew I liked two things. I knew I liked sports, but I also knew I liked the business side of things. And so I went the sports route originally, tried that out for like a quarter or semester. And I was like, this is not for me. So going back to what I knew I loved and what I was good at, I was always good at computers. I was always good at figuring out how to use the latest software, always had the latest toys, gadgets, all that good stuff. And so I was like, what can I actually do with this? How can I make it a career? And so it was mentioned to go for information systems in college as my degree. So I did that for undergrad, really liked it, really enjoyed it. Things were coming easy. Things were simple for me from that perspective. Decided to go to grad school for it. And so I continued to pursue that particular track in life until now. But it did take a long time to understand what I actually liked in tech, because if anyone who's listening knows, tech is a huge umbrella. Like there's so many different things that you can do in tech. So I did a lot of work to understand what exactly I wanted to do in tech and often made different pivots so I can pursue different avenues within the tech industry.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise thing to say, right? It is one of the most challenging things to young people to pick something in life. And so then, if we pick in tech, then in tech there's so many things you can do in tech. And I think it really has to do with people's preferences and what they want, right? My daughter is a CS major at Northeastern, and so she's in tech, but she still has a long way to figure out what exactly she wants to do and how she wants to spend her time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people have different abilities and stuff. So what is your thing in tech?
Yeah, I actually want to go back and touch on what you mentioned there because you always have to know, it's good to know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? You know, what actually excites you. And so that was one of the things that kind of started myself off in the journey. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to build really cool things. And I also knew I had great organizational skills So I was like, what can I do that would incorporate all of that, but like still keep me in tech? So I started to go the deeper technical route where I was doing application development. That kind of wasn't for me. It was cool at the time, but I just did not want to code all day. That wasn't my personality. Even though I'm an introvert, I really like having